Welcome once again to Noir Alley. I am your virus-free host, Eddie Muller. Today I have for you a 70-year-old film that's incredibly timely. It's The Killer That Stalked New York, released by Columbia Pictures in 1950. Now, all you linguistic experts, just calm down. The title is not an example of improper grammar. The killer in this case is not a who, it's a virus brought into Manhattan by an unsuspecting carrier. And if that doesn't sound very noir to you, relax. The carrier, played by Evelyn Keyes, is smuggling hot diamonds into the country for her husband. And that louse, played by Charles Corvin, is having an affair with Evelyn's sister, played by Lola Albright. So the beautiful blonde mule decides to give her rotten spouse a lethal kick in the head. So yes, indeed, there is sufficient crime and bad behavior to qualify this as noir. But the movie is a strange hybrid, as the story of these crooks is presented against the backdrop of an epidemic potentially infecting the citizens of New York. As I said, this film will resonate with viewers today in a much different way than it would have just a year ago. It's based on the true case of a smallpox epidemic that threatened New York in 1947. I'll hold off on the actual details until after the movie, although as you are no doubt aware, New York survived. But the facts of that incident are fascinating and worth noting after the movie. The Killer That Stalked New York was based on a 1948 article in Cosmopolitan magazine by Milton Lehman, adapted for the screen by Harry Essex. And Essex was a great choice for several reasons. He was a native New Yorker who spent the early part of his life as a social worker while writing plays in his spare time. He served in the military during World War II, and after being demobilized, he had the kind of break wannabe screenwriters dream of. He met an old friend who is now a Columbia Pictures scout, recruiting playwrights to write for the movies. Many of Essex's early credits weren't for Columbia, however. He showed a knack for crime pictures, working on several B pictures at RKO, Anthony Mann's Desperate from 1947 and Richard Fleischer's Bodyguard, released the next year. This film was the biggest assignment yet for Essex, given that studio boss Harry Cohn agreed the film needed to be shot largely on location in Manhattan, which makes it somewhat surprising that the project was entrusted to director Earl McAvoy, who had only one feature under his belt, Cargo to Cape Town, a fun but undistinguished B he made the year before. The biggest challenge for Essex and McAvoy was balancing an intimate crime story against a backdrop of public panic. As a result, the film is a cross between film noir and public service announcement. It even has the stentorian narration of Reed Hadley to punch home the urgency of the action.
As the frightened city felt the clammy hand of death settle in the streets, panic was born.
Fortunately, that stilted device is more than offset by the fantastic cinematography of Joe Birock, another native New Yorker who clearly relished this assignment. This film was completed shortly after the release of 20th Century Fox's Panic in the Streets, also about a lethal virus threatening a major city. Columbia decided to hold the film for 6 months to avoid direct comparisons. As a result, it ended up being lost in the avalanche of great films released in 1950. This film doesn't entirely integrate its disparate strains, but it is fascinating, especially for viewers today, living through a pandemic that was not controlled in its early stages. Noiristas will enjoy seeing many familiar faces in this one. Barry Kelly, Art Smith, Roy Roberts, Whit Bissell, and Dorothy Malone in one of her last small parts before becoming a major star. Here is The Killer That Stalked New York.